r/ask Reddit. What is technically wrong but nobody cares? People often associate the Jonestown Massacre with Kool-Aid, which is where you get phrases like wow he really drank the Kool-Aid etc. Technically the drink used to poison all those people was a different brand called Flavor Aid. You're out there, committing mass suicide, and you won't even bother to buy the real name brand sugary drink mix. Probably had to save for the taxes and hell. Combination locks are really supposed to be called permutation locks because the order in which you put the numbers in matters. It's my wife's birthday and she wants you to know she strongly disagrees. She urges that the mathematical usage of the word is different from the common language usage, and that combination in common usage means exactly what the dictionary says, including an ordered sequence or combination for opening a lock. She adds that she was very sassy and waved her finger, and that the same was necessary in material. She's a math teacher and we're drinking, but I think she has a point. Long may she reign. The graphite in pencils being called lead. Pretty much everyone knows that it's not lead, but it's still often called that to this day. The German word for pencil is still literally lead pen, Bleistift. In Chinese and Japanese it's the same, literally lead brush, comma, and the word for brush is also used nowadays to mean pen in Chinese. What 95% of people think are the rules of Monopoly? There is no money in the center. Free parking is just that, free parking. If you don't buy our property it must be auctioned. Landing directly on go does not give you $400. Houses, hotels can run out etc. etc. Good luck finding anyone who wants to play it proper. It's also funny how all these house rules only feed into the #1 complaint about the game, that it takes too damn long. It's always amused me that almost everyone plays by the same house rules, to the point that it's weird when you actually meet someone who doesn't use them. Do people usually keep adding hotels and houses? That's the only house rule I didn't know about. I follow all of the other house rules, but continually adding hotels would ruin the flow of the game, for me. When my grandma who has Alzheimer's thinks it's her birthday. With dementia it's better to go along with their reality at the time. Yes, it's lying, but it's a kind lie. No one likes being told that they're wrong or not remembering right. The hardest thing is when it's impossible. My grandma would have fits demanding that my dad, uncle and I took her to her husband. Her husband died some 10 years prior, and so there was nothing we could do to meet that demand. Sometimes she'd yell about wanting to go home, and I'd just put her in the car and drive around for a good 20-30 minutes before coming home. Those were slightly easier nights. Slightly. A scratch in 8-ball billiards means the opposing player gets ball in hand, can put the ball anywhere they want, and shoot in any direction. Having to shoot from behind an imaginary line and only in one direction is some bullshit. Bar rules. Wives' tale nonsense. But try telling that to 90% of people who play pool in bars. I used to play in a pool league and nobody outside of the league believed me. Frankenstein is the doctor, not a creature cobbled together and given life by Dr. Frankenstein. That said, Frankenstein is the monster. Edit. Yes, XKCD did their own version where Frankenstein was the name of the monster. Yes, it is widely accepted to call the creature Frankenstein and people will understand what you mean. However, you don't have a name it until it is taken or given to you. When you have a child, you can actually change their last name from your own if you so wish, depending on where you are and local laws. Nowhere in Mary Shelley's book is that creature given a name. Intelligence is knowing that Frankenstein is not the monster. Wisdom is knowing that Frankenstein is the monster. And actually understanding texts is realizing both are monsters. Luke, I am your father. He says no, I am your father, same deal, beam me up. Scotty, nobody ever actually says that. And Sherlock never says elementary, my dear Watson, anywhere in the original text. People use assault to describe some kind of harmful contact like a punch or kick or something along those times. Legally, assault refers to a threat of bodily harm. Battery is when the contact actually occurs. It's possible to assault someone, threaten, without actually hitting them. It's possible to batter someone without actually assaulting them, and possible to do both. People also commonly use robbed when they mean burgled, as in I've been robbed, but they mean someone broke into their house and stole the TV. It's become so common it's considered correct by many people, but in law enforcement there is a distinct difference. Burglary is when the person doing the stealing and the person being stolen from don't encounter each other during the stealing, like a cat burglar etc. And robbery is when they do, like a pickpocket. People assume glass is a solid because it looks like one. More informed people, however, will say that glass is actually an extremely slow-flowing liquid. You can tell because very old glass windows are always thicker at the base, suggesting they've been slowly flowing down for centuries. The truth is that glass is, in fact, a solid, not a liquid. They used to make windows way back then by spinning molten glass on a turntable so that the centrifugal force would stretch it out, creating a sheet of glass. A side effect of this was that molten glass would build up around the edges of the mold, making it thicker. These thicker edges would be placed in the window frames at the bottom so that they wouldn't be top heavy. I read the first paragraph and got all ready to be triggered. Luckily I read the second before embarrassing myself. Plus even if it acted kinda like a liquid it would still be a solid by definition anyway. Saying vagina when you really mean vulva. People tend to beat around the bush when it comes to such sensitive subject matter. Calling it a vagina is like calling your face your throat. The new millennium technically started in 2001, not 2000. No one cares. I saw a Superman comic when I was a kid, late 70s or early 80s, that portrayed the new millennium as starting in 2001. Confused the hell out of me. The inner mathematician and computer scientist in me is screaming 0 is important. Goddamn it. Using a name brand to refer to the generic product medicine. For example Kleenex for tissue or Claritin for loratadine. I think it's the same with Tannoy. It's a brand name but everyone calls loudspeakers Tannoys. Same deal with jacuzzi. It's a hot tub unless it's made by jacuzzi, in which case it's a jacuzzi hot tub. Sparkling wine can only be called champagne if it comes from the region of Champagne in France. Anywhere else it's just sparkling wine. Edit. Since people have asked. Yes, I'm from the UK and those announcements you hear at a sporting event, airport and train station informing you of a schedule change, lost luggage, etc. are made by loudspeakers. http://images, Wisajig, Compass speakers, JPG, but are referred to as Tannoy announcements by some. But it can only a Tannoy announcement if the brand is Tannoy. https://www.tannoy.com. Possibly the most useless piece of information I know. I didn't even think of champagne, but that's a great example. Parmesan has a similar protected designation of origin for the EU, but not outside of the EU. My personal favorite example is Zamboni versus Ice Resurfacer. When you play Uno, you're not supposed to keep drawing cards until you have a match if you don't have any cards that match in your hand. People don't care and keep playing that way anyway. I know that's not the actual rules, but it can get ducking hilarious when people draw half a deck. I agree. There is nothing better than watching someone with 2 cards left forced to draw half the deck. With each card that's not a match, they get more and more frustrated. The Great Wall of China is not the only man-made object visible from space. Yeah, there's also your mother. Just because she's had 100,000 men inside her doesn't make her a building. The use of the word organic. Technically the water you drink is not organic. The plastic bottle, on the other hand, is. Speak for yourself. I prefer my food to be silicone-based. People say nauseous when they actually mean nauseated, unless they mean they cause nausea, which they usually don't, until they throw up from being nauseated. Edit. Holy shit. People, I understand that words can change meaning. That's exactly why I mentioned it. Nauseous has changed meaning over time because nobody cares. See title of thread. You can stop arguing with me now. Yeah, my Bill told me this when I was pregnant and going through morning sickness. I gave him a look that could have killed him, lol. I think this one is slipping into acceptable use, merely because when people misuse the term, it is rarely the time or place to correct them. People using theory when they mean hypothesis. So many arguments with religious in-laws about how evolution is just a theory. Sigh. That one line is why I refuse to use the word theory colloquially. A casualty doesn't mean someone who died. A casualty is anyone that got injured as well as killed. That's why reports of battles have both casualties and deaths. A casualty is someone who can no longer fight, be they sick, injured, killed, captured, or anything in between. I remember my history teacher in high school explaining that you want to cause as many casualties without fatalities in war in order to sap your enemy's resources. Fatalities equals graves. Casualties equals graves and also everyone you have to take care of. Octopuses is correct. So it's not octokittens? No, there was only one James Bond movie with that name, so it's not plural. I could care less. I care. I care so much. Why do you do this to Emmy? Sounds like you could care less. Searing a steak does not lock in the juices. In fact, it pretty much does the opposite. It's still an important thing to do to bring out flavor, but when restaurants advertise that they cook it to seal in the juices, they are wrong. When meat is seared, which means cooked at a high temperature over dry heat, it undergoes something called the Maillard reaction, which is a browning reaction. As the meat hits the hot pan, moisture on the surface of the meat evaporates and the meat undergoes a chemical change that results in a roasted or meaty aroma and flavor. Think of it as caramelizing the meat, much in the same way that onions or sugars caramelize and change in flavor. Source edit. Here is a video of Alton Brown showing that searing does not seal in the juices. Magazine versus clip. Cartridge instead of bullet. People also often refer to a rooty tooty point and shooty as a gun. Jesus Day. Jesus B-Day. Does Jesus B-Day use holy water? The rampant misuse of begs the question. It does not mean to raise the question. It is when you are making an argument that assumes the conclusion is true in order for your premise to prove the conclusion. I still don't get it. Fewer. God's eye was less than. When people say same difference, it doesn't mean that they're the same. It means they're equally different from whatever you're talking about. Right. But if both are correct, the difference is zero. You don't catch a cold because of cold weather, and yet you still have people saying that it's the reason why. You need to contract the virus to get sick, and although there are factors involving cold weather that help spread it, being cold has nothing to do with it. Believed this for a long time, but it looks like this myth might be a myth. Cold viruses reproduce better at lower temperatures. What's more, it looks like your immune system is a little weaker in cold weather. Between that and the fact that people are more generous with their germ spreading when they're holed up indoors together, I think it's inaccurate to say that being cold has nothing to do with it. That said, it's still fully fair to say that colds are not caused by the cold, because that doesn't acknowledge the virus involved. I mean, Lil Critter worked hard to make you miserable. It deserves some credit. Putting Q-tips in your ears. I know it's wrong, but it just feels so right. Yeah baby, stick it in and swirl it around a bit. A lot of people think Fox owns the film rights for Fantastic Four, but they're actually owned by a German production company called Constantin Films, who have an exclusive distribution deal with Fox. So the Germans are responsible for more crimes against humanity? You only use 10% of your brain, drives me up the wall. That sounds like what someone who is only using 10% of their brain would say. Calling them batteries. For AA, AAA and the little button ones, they are all technically cells, and a bunch of cells is a battery. However, nobody gives half a duck about the correct terminology except GCSE and A-level electronics exam papers. Edit. Today I learned by the definition of a battery means a second single cell can be considered a battery. It's a battery of cells, or battery for short. Isn't it technically assault until there is bodily harm involved? People jokingly ask, who's buried in Grant's tomb? The truth is, no one is buried there. Grant and his wife Julia are entombed, above ground, not buried. People ask that? Not once. For all intensive purposes, it's supposed to be intents and purposes, you uncultured swines. Santa Claus is an entire society lying to children. Lying to children is a time-honored tradition though. Edit. What did I do to summon r/atheism? PIN number. PIN already stands for personal identification number. So every time someone says it, they are actually saying personal identification number. And on that note, ATM machine. I like how the Los Angeles Angels translates to the Angels Angels. Roy Moore is not a pedophile because pedophilia is attraction to prepubescent children. Ephebophilia is attraction to adolescents. Yeah, this might be the most apt answer in the thread. Truly, nobody cares that there's a difference because of the moral similarity. People typing should have instead of should have or should have. I'm sorry, but are you implying that nobody cares about this? I'm ducking outrage by it. Edit. Typo. The usage of jealousy and envy. Jealous is when you're afraid someone will take what you have. Envy is when you want something someone else has. Saying cement when you're talking about concrete. Cement is a powder mixed with sand, gravel and water to make concrete. If it was a cement sidewalk, it would blow away on a windy day. People are hanged. Objects are hung. It sounds like hillbilly grammar, but it's correct and sounds better once you get used to it. I'm in a survivors of suicide loss grief support group, and it takes a lot of restraint not to correct someone when they say their loved ones hung themselves. My desire not to be perceived as Larry David is the only thing stopping me. Finally brought it up with the group leader in private last night at our holiday gathering, and she thanked me for educating her. People can be hung too. Here in Florida, I guess running stop signs is okay to most people, which is duck-eyeing bullshit, and if I have someone run a stop at a 4-way stop I am going to lose my shit. The amount of people who say schizophrenic when they mean split or multiple personality. Edit. Okay, the number of people. Sheesh. The amount of people who say split or multiple personality when they mean dissociative identity disorder. Astrology. People say orangutan and sherbet when they are actually orangutan and sherbet. There's no second G or R in them. It's not hacking if you're ducking moron with your credentials. The assertion that non-standard varieties of English are incorrect. Discriminate is not a negative word. For centuries being discriminating was a sign of wealth, class, or intelligence. It is only when you add a word in front of it that it can take on negative connotations. The same for diverse. The word carries no value judgment. A group consisting of Hitler, Derek Jeter, Frank Sinatra and Donald Trump is diverse but not necessarily good. It's not a podium. It's a lectern. Further implies figurative distance or depth. Farther means actual distance. They seem to be merging into using further for everything. The way most people serve the ball in ping pong, the ball must be tossed at least 6 inches in the air out of an open, flat palm. Almost nobody does that. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.